Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, the Texas Longhorns heading into 2025. We do not agree on much. Both our number one teams heading into 2025. Both of our national championship picks heading into 2025 as well. But Dill, that doesn't necessarily mean you don't have question marks about this Texas program going into 2025. And look, the national media headline is going to be Arch Manning taking over this offense, which we both have a ton of confidence that it's going to be an upgrade at the quarterback spot going into 2025. I think the next big storyline surrounding this team is the offensive line replacing a lot of really good football players, specifically two NFL tackles. Dill, the way I look at it, yeah, you can have certain question marks about it. I don't see it being a problem going into the 2025 year. You're talking about a guy like Trevor Gooseby, came in, played both left and right side at times, played extremely well. Coach Sark's done a great job recruiting these guys out of the high school ranks. This offensive line is really talented. It's really deep. Again, there are question marks there, but you feel pretty good about it being a solid unit in 2025. To us, I think both of us, the biggest question here is on the defensive side of the football, in the middle of the defensive line, is Texas good enough there? Now, I think Coach Sark, very similar to us, had probably some concerns, right? You lose guys like Collins, Broughton, Norton. Those are a lot of guys that play a lot of football that you had to replace. The question is, does Texas, going into spring practice here, have enough on the inside? Want to take a deep dive into this defensive line, talk about what we think it will be going into 2025 before we get into it, as always. To the Texas fans, would love to hear how y'all feel about the middle of this defensive line, because there's a lot of different ways. There are some names that are really intriguing, and I think the best way I would probably sum it up before we really get into these players here is a lot of talent. And Travis Shaw, former five-star guy, Justice Terry, five-star guy, Alex January, freshman last year, flashed in a big-time way. There's some talent on the middle of this defensive line, not necessarily a ton of known commodities. Y'all think it's good enough? Let it fly in the comments section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Middle of February, talking Texas defensive line. Appreciate you guys. Dill, without further ado, let's start with Cole Brevard, who I think is probably the biggest known commodity. And when I say that, it's like, all right, Cole Brevard is coming in from Purdue. I don't think he's going to be a first-team All-SEC guy, but I also think he's going to be a very solid player for Texas on the middle of the defensive line. What does he bring to this Texas defense going into 2025?
I think you said it. Now, he doesn't replace an Alfred Collins or some of these, or Byron Murphy, like that type of defensive tackle that's been so disruptive for Texas for the past couple of years. But again, you certainly need guys who you just know snap in, snap out are going to play really hard and play effective football, not get moved around too much, be good at like kind of plugging holes and letting your linebackers work. And that's an important thing because you look, this is an athletic group of linebackers who can go sideline to sideline. So Cole Brevard will just give him a steady hand, I think. But again, I think the much bigger question is who's going to replace that top end ability that Texas has had for the past few years, and I think has done really well with.
Yeah, in my take on Cole Brevard, having gone back and watched him at Purdue, you kind of took the words out of my mouth. Cole Brevard comes in, the person that's happiest about Cole Brevard coming in is Anthony Hill Jr. You know, Cole Brevard's not going to be a guy that's getting beyond the line of scrimmage and creating a ton of negative plays, but what he's going to be doing is eating up double teams, allowing Anthony Hill to come downfield and make a lot of plays. That's kind of the benefit you get from Cole Brevard. Dill, I guess I'll let you answer your question here. You look at the middle of this defensive line and you say, all right, who could be the guy that is wrecking games like we saw from a Tavondre Sweat or Byron Murphy or Alfred Collins? Who could be the guy that steps up for Texas on the middle of this defensive line?
Now, to me, I think you got two guys who I'd really look at, and it's Alex January and Travis Shaw. And Alex January, I think a lot of Texas fans know, like, again, probably came in a little light last year, just didn't seem like he had the size to really be a premier defensive tackle like year one. But you saw some moments in the spring game, some moments in his sparing snaps in 2024. Like, yeah, that's a guy who could be really interesting. Travis Shaw is a guy who, you said it, like came out as a five-star recruit, has not played anywhere near the consistent level of ball that you want to see him. I don't know that the effort has always been there. I don't know that, again, you've seen the flashes, but just wildly inconsistent. I think he's a guy, if Texas can kind of get something more out of him, and that's a coaching staff that, again, you look, that's probably been the most effective part of this Texas program is what they've done, developing guys, getting guys to buy in and play really hard. I do wonder what they can get out of Shaw and maybe something that North Carolina just couldn't.
Yeah, what I think is unique about Travis Shaw is you add this kid to your program. You know he can play. Like he's going to be playing 20 plus snaps a game. The question is, can we get the 5-star that we saw coming out of high school? I mean, Travis Shaw coming out of high school was kind of a freaky dude, and the way you just described him was probably the way we talked about him coming out of high school, where that size and especially the footwork. I mean, he was like a dancing bear out there coming out of high school. Really, really good athlete for that size. The consistency wasn't always there. You've probably seen the same things from him during his first couple of years at UNC. But Dill, I mean, we don't have to get into like a big film deep dive of Travis Shaw, but you turn on some of his UNC stuff. It's very easy to see why he was a 5-star. And Travis Shaw working right here on this right guard against Pitt. Name me another 330-pound defensive lineman that you see move like this. I mean, this is some elite stuff from Travis Shaw. He has that ability to be an absolute game wrecker for Texas. Again, this is like the twitch and the feet for a guy this size. I mean, it's imposing. It is serious. Now the question is, can he take his game up to the next level and kind of be that consistent guy? Now,
because you also see him play big physical ball too, like his ability when he gets his hand on guys and he's playing hard and like shooting it out. Like he does have those moments where you're like, oh, he is big physical. He can overpower guys. Again, he brings some of that athleticism as well. It's like, it's very frustrating, I think, watching him and like, why isn't he more dominant in these games? Because again, all the traits are there. And that's where it gets tough because obviously he is going into year 4. This is not a true freshman that we're talking about. Like,
agreed.
It feels like he's probably had ample time to really put this together. But again, you've seen some really good and again, I don't even mean to say get up here and say he's played poorly all his college career. Like, he's been a solid, dependable guy.
100%.
But again, when you're talking about like reaching that Byron Murphy, Alfred Collins type level, it feels like he's kind of got the talent to do that. And again, I think that is something Texas really probably.
I'll throw this out here, Dylan. One, I got 2 things to throw out. One, here's the player comp. Maybe is like Bear Alexander. And that's the same way we talk about Bear Alexander at USC. It's like, holy smokes, if you just took his 20 best plays, you're talking about a first-round NFL draft pick. But then you kind of see the other 80% of the snaps, and like, we don't see enough from you. Can you get that number to be a little bit higher in 2025? Second thing that excites me, Dill, that UNC coaching staff, and it's going to be a little bit of a stray at Mac Brown here, is non-serious, especially on the defensive side of the football. From a culture standpoint, from a coaching staff standpoint, like guy that was just a defense that was not getting better. In fact, it was just getting worse year after year after year. He's coming into a program that that Coach Sark has the culture right. But I think secondly, Dill, I mean, these guys get better. The player development is top notch at Texas. Can Travis Shaw reach it going into year 4? There are some reasons to think he does. Alex January, this was a guy that there were so many storylines going into the 2024 Texas spring game, like quote unquote quarterback battle between Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. You had some really talented guys coming in, Colin Simmons, Ryan Wingo. The Alex January storyline was like he probably wasn't going to play, and he didn't really play much for Texas because you had guys like Norton, Broughton, and Collins. Well, you go back and watch that spring game. Like there were some things there for Alex January, and although didn't get the opportunity I think either of us really wanted him to get during his freshman year, you're talking about another guy that I think has a lot more upside than you would assume because he was kind of an underranked 3-star prospect coming out of the state of Texas in the 2024 class.
But then again, I think, he wasn't probably as physically developed as like a guy like Justice Terry, who probably has a better chance to make a bit more of a year 1 impact. But again, you've seen some really good flashes. His ability, like first step quickness, get behind the line of scrimmage and make TFLs, like that to me is really what I'm looking for. Because I don't even know that you need elite pass rush from the inside of the defensive line this year. Like you're going to get that with your edge players. I think in certain spots you can kick Ethan Burke or Colton Vasek down inside and let them rush from inside on certain downs. But who's going to be able to be explosive and athletic in the middle to make some TFLs and get themselves into chances to rush the passer? That to me,
I'm gonna push back, Dale. You talking like I think Alex January, some of the best stuff I saw from him is what he can do rushing the passer. Take a look right here. I mean, kind of working at that 3-tech year is going to end up working on this tackle, and you're going to see some bend that it's hard to see these bodies. When you see big number 97 right here, one, big-time power in the hands, and then look at this bend, Dill. Look at this bend. I mean, you don't see many guys bend like Alex January just bends right there as a true freshman, early enrollee kid. I think he can provide you a little bit more juice in. Do I see where you're coming from? Yeah, because you do have some bigger edge guys that you can get creative with. You asked me who I'm most excited for on the defensive line. Cole Brevard, Travis Shaw in the portal, Justice Terry. I'm excited for. There's nobody more excited for than a guy like Alex January. And then you open up the conversation, right? I think Cole Brevard, Travis Shaw, Alex January, are going to play for Texas. Then the question is, all right, Justice Terry, who just looks like an absolute physical specimen, no doubt has the physical traits to play early. The question is, what do you get out of him? And then Dill, Hero Kanu. This is another really interesting player that's probably going to fly under the radar because he was a late transfer portal addition. That was kind of when the hype was dying down around the transfer portal. Here's what intrigues me about Hero Kanu is, yes, he's going into year 4. He's not a guy that is a young guy that you're hoping to develop. But what makes him different from a lot of other kids is he was a guy that grew up in Europe, came over to America, was new to the sport of football, freaky athlete that committed to Ohio State, but we knew it wasn't going to be 1 year and he was ready. You probably knew it wasn't going to be 2 years and he was ready. What does he look like going into year 4? Fascinating question for me as well.
And I do think like you kind of set his floor as like, even though he didn't play a ton for Ohio State, that was a really premier interior line group that they had. So that's not necessarily an indictment on his game. I mean, they just had a bunch of really old veteran guys in that middle who could really play. But I will say, when you go back and watch the snaps he got, there is one thing you can be pretty comfortable about is I don't think he's going to give you particularly poor play. Like, he is a big physical player in the middle who, again, you just talk about like, you got to set the bare minimum of what you need to do. You can't get moved around on double teams. Again, I don't know that you've seen real playmaking ability from Hero Kano yet, and I don't know that you really want to rely on it. But I will say, like, in terms of just adding another body who you can put in there and you kind of know what he's going to give you, something like Bill Norton. It's not like Bill Norton was making a ton of plays for Texas, but you certainly need that ability to just have a fresh body you can put into the game and not think like, oh, if I put this guy in, we're just going to get the ball running.
At the very least, it's just the depth addition. Because if you talk about not having a guy like Hero Kanu, it's Cole Brevard, Travis Shaw, Alex January, and then it has to be Justice Terry as a true freshman, which is probably not what you want. And I wouldn't even be surprised if Texas, like, there's not a lot of spots on this roster where you look at, so they need to address it. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there was one position they are going to address in that spring transfer portal, kind of similar to what they did with Jermaine Lole last year. It might be on the inside of the defensive line. Last one, Lance Jackson. 6'5", 270 right now. Kind of just intrigued to see what the body looks like going into spring practice. There's a chance he's probably up to 290, and right now it depends on what Texas wants to do with him. Does Texas want to leave him out on the edge where I think he could be an elite? He's going to be good wherever he is. Does Texas maybe put weight on him, which he has got plenty of frame to do? And I quite frankly see an interior defensive lineman in Lance Jackson. I know some people disagree with that. What does he look like going into 2025? Because that's a guy that, 6'5", 270 right now, 34-inch arms, 10-inch hands, extremely good athlete for the size. That's another answer you could potentially have. We'll see how it works out. Again, this is a Texas team that as you go up and down this roster, it's box checking. This is probably the biggest concern that we both have, and it's probably the biggest storyline for me going into spring practice is, all right, who's stepping up in the middle of this defensive line? We'll pause it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. A little nitty-gritty deal for a Sunday afternoon in February, but it was a conversation we wanted to have. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.